What's up, guys? Solar Polar Bear here, and today I have a review for you on Elyon Online, an MMO that just left closed beta. Now, before I begin, I really need to say this. I understand the game is in closed beta. I understand that this is not the full release of the game, and I understand that it is still a work in progress. So please understand that I am commenting on the state of the game as it is right now, not the state of the game that it will be in the future. So, I just finished playing Elyon Online, and I had a pretty decent experience. Now, this video is about to delve into the whole negative of things. It's apparently what I do when I start complaining is I will just focus on a lot of the negative, but I'll try my best to find some positives in this. Now, I want to go down my own list here and express some concerns I have for the game of its current state, and potentially give some solutions to things. Now, mind you, I'm not a developer, and anything I say doesn't mean I know what I'm talking about. They're ideas, they're theoretical, and I'm just pitching things. I like to come up with solutions. I like to come up with ideas, so that's what I do. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into this. So first things first, character creation I felt like was extremely lacking. There wasn't really anything to go off of that was unique. It was your generic cookie cutter MMO. There was, yes, hair color, hair types, skin colors, eyes were a little different. You could manipulate the models slightly a bit, which was similar to Black Desert Online, but not as complicated. There wasn't really anything that shone out to me. You know, with Black Desert, there were these complex character creation methods that actually blew the game out of the water for me and was what drew me in at the first place. I loved it. I absolutely fell in love with the characters I made because I spent such a long time working on them. It was almost too much time. You know how like you sit there when you play an MMO and you decide on your character's name for 4.5 hours? Yeah, that was me with my characters, is I kept tweaking everything. But for this, I felt like it really wasn't anything special. There was nothing unique, nothing that stood out. And to me, it felt like a generic MMO that you could just press a few buttons and then boom, you have your character. As well as character creation, classes didn't really feel unique either. Half the classes were just generic cookie cutter. And I'm going to compare it to Terra too, because they were pretty much the classes from Terra. There wasn't something unique. Yeah, people can argue and say Gunner, but Terra has Gunner. You can say Mystic and all that, Terra has it. All the classes is what Terra has. And yes, I understand Terra is a dated MMO, and I also understand that there's an extra class that's going to be released. Right now we're talking about the Western release of the game, which is based back to the version in January 2021. There's still a new class. It's the Slayer class, I understand. And I'm going to hit on this again right in the middle of my video because people tend to not listen. I understand this is an older build. This is from January 2021. I understand. The tutorial was okay. It wasn't really anything interesting, and the story really didn't pull me through. I wasn't hooked in, and I wasn't really interested in what they had to offer. You have to understand that when you put out an MMO, there has to be several different hooks that you have to pull players in with. One could be a story. If you have a compelling story, you can draw players in. The other one could be graphics. And if you have gorgeous graphics, people are going to be drawn in. The same thing with any other mechanic that you parade as one of the many facets of your game. It has to be unique. It has to be enough to pull your players in. And with the story, I really didn't find it interesting. Now, I only picked one of the factions, but that first impression that I had wasn't the best. It wasn't unique, and it didn't even draw me in. I ended up skipping half the dialogue because it wasn't interesting to me. I just wanted to get to parts of the game that were interesting. Speaking on the game itself, it really wasn't even that gorgeous. Yes, there was some unique looking models, and yes, everything was cute and whimsical, and it had really nice coloring, but nothing was new. It was old, it was generic, and it wasn't unique. It's nothing that's going to overshadow any of the other games out there. There's plenty of others with the exact same motif. Look at Terra, look at BDO. And on top of the whole landscape thing, the landscape itself looked boring and there wasn't really any direction to it. I found myself going from one area to the other and the colors just drastically change. And some of the models and stuff are basically the same and reused. And speaking of reused models, the mobs were copy paste reused textures and models. And I kept finding it. I hit level 40, so if you want to say I haven't gone through the game enough, you should understand that first impressions are everything. I'm not going to play through a game that I'm not finding interesting and that's not hooking me in at all, that also has a whole bunch of issues I have problems with. It's just not going to happen. I'm not going to force myself to do it just because someone tells me to do. I'm going to judge it based on my first impression. The world itself doesn't even feel lived in. It's just pretty much town, mobs, that's it. There's nothing really lived in. There's no unique areas that seem like the mobs actually belong there or the towns actually belong here. It seems like it's just a zone where they threw down a town and then threw down mobs in between it, and then you have to go about your day grinding. That's it. And there's a huge problem I have with the landscape. In the beginning of the game, right out of the tutorial, they give you a wingsuit, essentially wings that you can glide with. Almost all of the landscape that I came into contact with was flat or had minor hills. Why are you giving me wings and not letting me use it? I went through to level 40 and I only found myself gliding a few times. And it wasn't even for long. It was maybe for max 3 seconds. There was no use of it whatsoever. Instead, I found myself using the mount that they gave me. The wings were just a separate mount, and it was something flashy that had no use to it. It's like they grounded me after they gave me an interesting mechanic. You would think that if you want to bring people into your game and have something interesting for people to use, don't give them a wingsuit and then have everything based on the fucking ground. Maybe have some of the zones that are up on stilts or kind of hover airships that are up in the air like barges strung together. Or maybe some other crystals that are floating between other crystal platforms that you can jump between to get to areas. Like, if you're going to have flight in your game, you want to be able to use that early on and show people that that's fun and exciting. You don't want people to enter your MMO and think, oh, wow, this is generic and basic. It just gave me a whole bunch of stuff, but none of it's actually used. And when I say none of it's actually used, they toted around cannons and vehicles and other stuff, and they gave me a robot to use for about a minute. And it was cool and all, but it was so much later in my grind that I had already lost interest at that point. You're giving me things so much later than you should be. You should be hinting towards these all the way through, giving people that hype so that they can continue working through the game and enjoying it. Instead, it's as if I entered a store and I was looking at the advertisements in the window, and when I went inside, I asked them if they had any of whatever was on the window, and they told me, yeah, it's in the back. So then I wait for them to go in the back. Meanwhile, the rest of the store is right there open and able to shop through, and they show it to me when they come back out, and I go, oh, can I have that? And they say, you can hold it, but you can have it later too. So then I hold it, and then they take it back and put it in the back of the store. It's like no one would work that way. That's not how that shit works. You're supposed to be handing this thing to players. Even right off in the tutorial, they gave me a cannon to use and they gave me all kinds of cool shit, but none of it was used outside of the tutorial until much later in the game. And speaking about leveling up, it's generic, it's grindy, it's just the same boring stuff. If you want to stand out as an interesting and new MMO, at least in the West, you would think that you would pride yourself in a different type of questing or a different path for questing instead of having a generic go to village, unlock village, get all the quests from one person, and then go out and do them. It's not fun. No one wants to grind through a game that they have no idea about endgame at all, whether or not it's going to be good or bad or what they even have to offer. To me, they offered a few cool things in the beginning, but then just took them away and didn't let you use them. It's like, why do I want to play a game like that? Why do I want to play a game that doesn't continue to invest in my fun? And speaking about fun, the skills, they were mildly interesting. I liked the combos where you could change things up that did different things, like different knockbacks or knock-ups or whatever. They all seemed like the same friggin' rotation. That was it. I just used the same 4 skills and boom, done. You could do it with any class. I played a few different classes. It was just the same rotation. Nothing interesting. And I knew I was going to be using that same rotation once I got my end cap skill, whatever it was at level 45, because it just wasn't unique. There was nothing interesting to it. There was nothing new. And that's the whole point of this, is there was nothing new that they were toting. It was interesting skills with interesting additions, but nothing was new. There's also an easy button to go to your quest location, which I find kind of ridiculous, but once again, these are the same people with Black Desert. I don't want to have to press an easy button and then look at my phone for 15 minutes while my character decides to path over there without my input. I want to be able to see the world. I want to be able to see everything that's living in there. I want to see why it's lived in. I want to see the purpose for the quests I'm in, not click a button and then go there. And people can argue and say, oh, well, you just need to get to end game, or you need to PvP. It's like, those shouldn't be the only selling points of the game. They shouldn't. Your selling point of the game should be for a broad base, and then capitalize on what's good. Capitalize on the flying mechanic. Let people go nuts early on. It'll be great because you'll drag people in and it'll be really cool. Capitalize on lived in landscapes. Even if you have to make it smaller, make it so that these places that are being sieged by enemies look like they're being sieged. Make it so that these areas look like they're being fought in, look like they're being fought over. Make it so that that Fey area that looks all whimsical and everything actually looks like the enemies belong in there, rather than having a fucking crab in the middle of the desert that shoots water. Like, it just didn't make sense to me why you have a crab walking around there. Or these random other mobs that just don't even look like they're part of the landscape. Capitalize on these things. Add things in there to draw people in. Otherwise, people are going to look at it and not have any fucking idea what's going on here. It just looks like a mess of mobs thrown onto a landscape. And on another topic, PvP, while it was fun, it got boring really damn quickly. I was doing PvP for a bit, and then it was just like, oh, well, this is just the same old, same old. There's nothing new. And if someone wants to make a comment on dungeons, let me just be really fucking frank. If your first dungeon is at level 35 and only a one-player dungeon with the most boring mechanics and no lootables inside, why the fuck am I gonna play dungeons? There was no chests I could loot. There was nothing I could touch in there other than the mobs. Why? It's not interesting. And once I killed the boss, all I got was an RNG chest afterwards that gave me a random item. Like, the whole point of you entering a dungeon is to be able to loot and pillage and grab things that you want out of there, as well as killing bosses. But instead, I got a whole bunch of stuff that dropped gold and an RNG chest at the end. I know I tried to say that I was going to focus on some good here, and while I feel like it's new and it's got a little bit of an updated graphics, I really can't find much to go off. Yeah, it was exciting because it was new, but that's it. There are games out there that were very unique that have shut down. There's one I can think of, an example is WildStar. WildStar had a great approach to MMOs, and a lot of people said, oh, it fucking sucked. It was terrible. Its player base sucked. Its landscape looked lived in. The mechanics that you used to move around were something that they threw at you in the beginning. All its dungeons felt real and fun. It was a game that I actually felt excited to play and to move to next zones. It was interesting to explore and experience new things that they had to offer. That's the whole reason why I wanted to play it, and it allowed me to make new characters and grind out those new characters and figure out more about the lore and the history of the land. That's something that people like to look for in these games, is when you play an MMO, you're not going to just play one character. Some people like grinding out new characters. Why do I want to start over again in a game that doesn't allow me to utilize any of the fun things that you give me and then grind through it again to get to where I am? It's just not fun. I don't feel like Elyon Online has any sort of future. I feel like it's not going to have a future after it releases in the West. It's just going to die out. It's going to lose a lot of its player base. And yeah, sure, there's probably later mechanics that are really interesting and really cool, but unless they hook people in the beginning, it's not going to work out. They're going to leave and they're not going to find interest, because I'm not the only person who has these complaints. I may be a louder voice, and I may be a little bit more overt expressional about how I feel about these things, and hell, I may be more nitpicky. But there's people like me who actually join these games, expect to see something interesting and unique, and then they see it and go, wow, this is extremely disappointing. I'd rather go play Terra. So guys, anyways, thank you for sitting through my rant. I understand that a few of you are going to put some half-assed comments below about how you think I'm wrong and how you think I'm not playing through the whole game. But let me be clear, and I'm going to be as clear as possible. I understand the game's not in full build. I said this fucking 3 times now. And I understand that there might be stuff late game, but nothing hooked me in. I did not have fun. And at the end of the day, I want to have fun. It's my time dedicated to the game. I want it to be interesting and engaging. So anyways, guys, I'm Solar Polar Bear. You guys take care. Peace out.